History tells you, Cleopatra was powerful because of her beauty. That story is wrong. Cleopatra did not rule Egypt because of her face. She ruled because she understood money, politics, psychology, and leverage better than anyone alive. In a world ruled by men, she controlled the most valuable economy on earth, and Rome knew it. The most valuable kingdom on earth. When Cleopatra became queen, Egypt was not a dying empire clinging to relevance. It was one of the most economically powerful states in the ancient world. Egypt controlled resources that Rome could not replace and could not live without. The Nile made Egypt the most reliable agricultural producer in the Mediterranean. While other regions suffered droughts, failed harvests, and instability, Egypt produced grain consistently, year after year. That grain fed Rome's massive population and kept its armies alive. Beyond food, Egypt controlled gold mines in Nubia, luxury trade routes from Africa, and ports that connected the Mediterranean to the Red Sea. Rome had soldiers. Egypt had supply chains. And supply chains decide who survives long wars. Cleopatra did not inherit weakness. She inherited leverage. Rome's power looked dominant, but it was fragile without Egypt's resources. Cleopatra understood that whoever controls survival controls negotiation. She ruled the most valuable kingdom on earth, not by force, but by necessity. Cleopatra was trained, not lucky. Cleopatra was not a ceremonial ruler placed on a throne by tradition. She was prepared. Unlike many royals before her, she did not rely on advisors to think for her. She learned languages, economics, diplomacy, and statecraft personally. She spoke Greek, Egyptian, Latin, and several regional languages. That allowed her to communicate directly with merchants, priests, generals, and foreign envoys. She removed intermediaries. Information reached her faster. Decisions became sharper. Her fluency in Egyptian was not symbolic. It was strategic. She wanted legitimacy among common people, not just elites. Trust is the foundation of economic stability. A population that believes in leadership resists rebellion and supports taxation. Cleopatra's education shaped her power. She understood how systems fail, how incentives move behavior, and how loyalty is purchased long before it is demanded. This was not luck. It was preparation meeting opportunity. Rome needed Egypt more than Egypt needed Rome. Rome expanded aggressively, but expansion drains resources. Armies require constant feeding. Cities require constant supply. Victory creates responsibility. Cleopatra understood this pressure. Egypt's grain fed over half of Rome's population. Without it, unrest would spread instantly. Bread shortages meant riots. Riots meant political collapse. Cleopatra didn't need legions to threaten Rome. She needed logistics. Rome could conquer territory, but it couldn't easily replace Egypt's productivity. That imbalance created leverage. Cleopatra knew that economic dependence is more powerful than military intimidation. If Egypt withheld grain, Rome would not just suffer, it would destabilize internally. Cleopatra didn't threaten openly. She allowed Rome to understand the risk itself. That made her dangerous. Not because she attacked, but because she didn't need to. The Julius Caesar alliance. When Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt, Cleopatra did not challenge him directly. She read the situation correctly. Caesar didn't come only as a general, he came burdened by Roman politics, debts, and instability. Cleopatra offered something Rome desperately needed: financial stability. Egypt's wealth stabilized Caesar's position and strengthened his influence back home. In return, Caesar legitimized Cleopatra's rule. This alliance was not emotional, it was transactional. Caesar didn't just admire Cleopatra, he relied on her. Egypt's economy became a pillar of Roman order. Cleopatra secured her throne without warfare by embedding Egypt into Roman survival. This is how strategic power works. You don't resist a superpower head-on. You make it dependent on you. What history later labeled romance was, in reality, an economic merger. Control through taxation and trade. Cleopatra didn't just inherit wealth. She organized it. She centralized financial authority under the crown, tightened tax enforcement, and regulated grain exports carefully. Money flowed through structured systems. That mattered. Wealth unmanaged invites corruption. Cleopatra understood that control mattered more than abundance. She monitored trade routes, standardized coinage, and ensured that state revenue was predictable. Predictability creates stability. Stability attracts loyalty. Egypt didn't just produce wealth, it governed it efficiently. That efficiency made Cleopatra one of the richest rulers in recorded history. Not because she hoarded gold, but because she controlled economic flow. She didn't rely on charisma. She relied on systems. Systems outlast personalities. Mark Antony A.N.D. the Second Gamble. After Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra faced a new Rome, fractured, aggressive, and unstable. She made another calculated alliance. Mark Antony. Antony needed funding for military campaigns. Cleopatra had it. She financed his wars in exchange for protection and expanded influence in the Eastern Mediterranean. Again, this wasn't romance. It was leverage. Antony gained resources. Cleopatra gained security. But this time, Rome's internal politics shifted faster than expected. Antony underestimated Octavian. Cleopatra overestimated how long her leverage would last. Every strategy has a time limit. Cleopatra's second gamble pushed that limit too far. Why Cleopatra lost? Cleopatra didn't lose because she lacked intelligence, wealth, or preparation. She lost because Rome unified. Octavian consolidated power. Once Rome stabilized internally, it no longer depended on Egypt's money. Cleopatra's leverage expired. Wealth without military alignment becomes vulnerability. What once protected Egypt now made it a target. Rome didn't need negotiation anymore. It wanted control. This is how power shifts. Not suddenly, gradually. When dependency disappears, dominance follows. The death of an economic empire. Cleopatra's death ended independent Egypt. Rome absorbed its economy, grain supply, and gold reserves. Egypt became a resource colony. This wasn't conquest alone, it was absorption. The system was dismantled and repurposed. Empires rarely fall from invasion alone. They fall when their leverage is neutralized. Cleopatra's Egypt was too valuable to destroy. It was more useful to own. Why Cleopatra's story was erased? History reframed Cleopatra as emotional and seductive. That wasn't accidental. Strategic women are often rewritten to feel less threatening. A calculating queen challenges narratives of male dominance. So her intelligence was softened into romance. But Cleopatra wasn't driven by emotion. She was driven by leverage, timing, and systems. For years, she outplayed Rome. Modern parallels. Nothing about Cleopatra's strategy is ancient. Today, power still flows through necessities. Countries control energy, food, technology. Corporations control data, logistics, infrastructure. Whoever controls what others depend on controls negotiations. Cleopatra understood this 2,000 years ago. 3 wealth laws from Cleopatra. Wealth Law 1. Control what others depend on. Necessity creates leverage. Wealth Law 2. Money is power only when structured. Chaos invites takeover. Wealth Law 3. Timing determines survival. Leverage always expires. Final thought. Cleopatra was not powerful because she was admired. She was powerful because she controlled value. Wealth is quiet. Power is subtle. And strategy always outlives beauty. If you want more stories where money shaped history, subscribe to Kings, Empires, and Billionaires. Because the greatest financial lessons were written by empires, not textbooks.